There, my friends. Welcome to Apex Ascend. This is where we teach lions how to rise up and roar. You are a lion. We want you to go out there and make your voices heard. My name is Rodney LaBruce, and I am your host. And today we're going to get started with the first of 5 episodes in our new series called Understanding Poverty. Because I believe that while we look for solutions, it's good for us to understand the starting point. So each week, we'll explore different factors that contribute to poverty. And while we talk about these issues, we hope to go further and build lasting solutions together. Now, if you believe in a future where no one is left behind, then guess what? This conversation is for you. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that it's all right to tell a man to lift himself by his own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. Now, I know that we've all heard the story when it comes to America. America, bring me your hungry, you're tired, and you're ready to work. And if you send them, they'll have success. Because success, by doing those things, is all inevitable. Now, that's kind of the classic immigrant tale. The immigrant tale of the American dream. The whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps, they say, and you'll eventually reach some level of prosperity. Well, let's look at that for a second. Let's be honest, because that story is more myth than reality. The whole idea that success comes from just hard work alone sounds good. It's comforting, but it gives a hope that anybody can make it. But at the same time, it ignores something that's very uncomfortable to say. And that uncomfortable thing that we don't like to talk about is hard work by itself is not enough. Because success doesn't just come from hustle. It also comes from help. Now, about 10 years ago, I was laid off from a job that paid decent money. I wasn't rich by any measure or stretch of the imagination, but I was making decent money. My family was comfortable. I had a degree in finance. But the kind of work I was doing wasn't in high demand. So 10 years ago, or a little bit over 10 years ago now, when I was laid off from that job, it was real hard to find another position. I spent about a year unemployed. I was going through that whole period living off of savings. Then I spent about another year after that working at jobs that paid about $10, maybe $15 an hour just to support my family. Now, what that experience taught me is that poverty isn't about laziness or bad decisions. It's a really complex issue arising from things like job loss, rising costs, low wages, limited access to opportunity, health. Any one of these things can knock a family off of their feet. And honestly, had I been touched by one or more of those things, more of those factors, then my story could have gone an entirely different direction. Some people think that success comes down to brains and talent. There's a psychologist called or named Angela Duckworth, and she did research that says something else. What she found was that one thing all high achievers shared isn't genius, it isn't luck, it isn't skill, but it's grit, what she called it. Now, I call it commitment. I call it resilience. It's what keeps you moving even when the road gets too long. It's what keeps you knocking on doors, even though every door is slammed shut in your face. When people tell you it can't be done, it's what keeps you moving because you know it can. But grit or commitment or resiliency, it isn't enough because having grit, it'll help you survive, but it won't help you thrive. In order to thrive, you need people guide you. So she says that the one thing that all of these successful high achievers share is grit. But I throw in another item, and it's people that guided them. They all had mentors. They all had people they could turn to. So grit combined with guidance are the two things that every individual needs in order to achieve success. Grit by itself, you can survive on that, but you'll stay down there at the poverty line, never rising above it. So in order to rise above it, we all need guidance. Last week, I told you about the man who I met on the street who was homeless. And he told me that he had been out of prison for a few years. And he spent, I think, over 20 years in prison. And all the while he was out of prison, living homeless, he was trying to rebuild his life. And as he shared his story, I also told him a little bit of mine. And I told him that had it not been for the right people whispering in my ears at the right time, I could have ended up where he is. So, all in all, in order to thrive, we all need community, we all need support, and we all need opportunity. Now, this is bigger than just the personal or individual level because the same thing is very true when we go to end poverty because commitment alone isn't going to get us there. We also need strategy, one that's built on understanding systems and addressing these inequities and giving people real tools that they can stand on. Because right now, too many people are out there living on the edge and they're working hard. You see them every day. I see them every day. They're working very hard, doing everything right. But in one single unexpected turn, whether it be a layoff or severe illness, car accident, car breaking down, those one things, even one thing, can erase years progress. And I'm not telling you statistics here because I do have those, but I'm telling you something that I know to be true. One thing can erase years of progress. So it's not about effort. It's about the support systems that's around us. So when I talk about ending poverty, I'm not talking about handouts and giving things away at all. All I'm talking about is creating stability, wages that keep up with the cost of living, some sort of safety net that catches people before they fall too far that they cannot climb back up. Because when we think about poverty, poverty does not start with failure. It starts when we stop building systems that help people stand up. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of truth here. And sit back and grab your popcorn and listen for a couple of more minutes. You may not know this, you may, but we all see the world through what's called our own personal worldview. Now, when you think of a worldview, think of it as a pair of eyeglasses with lenses that you see through. So, a worldview is the lens that we see reality. It shapes our decisions, it shapes our values, and it even determines what's real and what isn't. It determines our reality. So when you think about worldview, you got to understand that two people can look at the very same data and come to completely different conclusions, all because they're seeing through different lenses. That's why you can have a group of 12 to sit on a jury and they all see the same evidence and they come to different conclusions. Everybody sees things differently. Everybody has their own personal worldview. So when people see poverty as a problem of laziness or lack of values, that's not evidence from data. That's evidence of their worldview. So we've been taught to criticize programs that the poor. But let's be real. Every single time a person claims mortgage interest deduction on their taxes, that's a government subsidy. The difference is who benefits from it. As a matter of fact, 96% of adults in America have received some sort of government assistance at some point in their lives. In fact, right now, in this current environment, you can look at farmers in Arkansas and ask them about subsidies. And they'll tell you that they have no problem at all with getting the government check. But far too often, those same voices look down on the single mom or the person from the urban environment who just so happens to be working two jobs just to make ends meet, but still need a little help. They look at them and say, no, you don't deserve it. So that's the kind of hypocrisy we have to confront that's caused by a person's worldview. What lens are they seeing reality through? So whenever you're talking to someone about anything at all, the first step is realizing that we all see through a pair of lenses. One that is shaped by our own experiences, our values, and our biases. Every one of us has a worldview. Every one of us has a set of lenses that determines the reality that we see. And the truth of the matter is, no one's lenses is perfectly clear. We all have distortions. But the key is recognizing that that is the starting point. If a person cannot recognize that we are looking through, or I am looking through a set of lenses that is already distorted and needs some sort of adjustment so that I can see reality clearly. If a person cannot accept that our lenses needs adjustment before we make decisions based on reality, there's a problem. That's why back in my old days, when I would argue with a person, I'd throw out data, I'd throw out facts, but I don't do that anymore. I try not to. I'm learning a little bit more day by day as I get older because I neither have the time nor the energy to deal with that. So now I'd rather cut core or cut straight to the worldview and making the person realize or understand that their vision is blurred and needs to be adjusted. So poverty, I believe, is the single most important issue of our time. If we solve it, we solve almost everything. If we let it fester, we risk losing everything. And Dr. King understood that. After the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1964 and 1965, he began to focus his emphasis on poverty because he understood that poverty cut across every line of race and class. It impacted everybody. As a matter of fact, in 1968, he planned what's called the Poor People's March on Washington. That was supposed to happen or did happen in March of 1968. But in April of 1968, he was assassinated just weeks before it could happen. Robert F. Kennedy also understood the importance of addressing the issue of poverty. But in that same year, he too was assassinated. Now, I'm not necessarily drawing any conspiracy theories between the two of those things. I'm just saying that they both focused on poverty and they were both assassinated around the same time. So we need to understand that the fight against poverty is real because it, more than anything, is the fight for the soul of this very nation. So here's what I want you to take away from this today. What I want you to take away is that grit matters, but it's not enough. Commitment matters, but we need strategy too. A person, in order to thrive, they need hard work, but they also need guidance and support because nobody does it alone. When I say nobody, I mean nobody. Every successful person has had mentors. They've had break. They've had second chances. They've had support. So we don't need to abandon the idea of hard work, but we also don't need to abandon the need to give people help, especially in times where it's most difficult. But putting all that together, putting it into a nice big ball of yarn, rolling it to the side, remember worldview. Remember, we all have lenses and we see reality through our set of lenses, through our very own experiences, our very own values. That's what determines our reality. We need to understand that no matter who we are, our vision is blurred because we're looking through a set of lenses that have been altered. So before we can see anything clearly, we need to make adjustments in what we see or how we see so that we can go on to make sure that the evidence we're using it correctly. We are interpreting it correctly because we cannot bring about solutions and change unless we read the problems correctly. If you believe that, then I want you to join me in this series, in this movement, and in this mission to end poverty once and for all. My goals are divided up into two categories. One of those categories is aspirational goals. The other is non-negotiable goals. Now, you know that I'm running for office, and I've met a lot of good people along the way. And I've learned that to have the title of candidate for Congress means a whole lot. It sets you in front of a lot of people that you would not have an opportunity to be sat in front of before. So I know the value of getting into office and actually having the title of a Congress member, because they carry a lot of weight. And if they use that power and authority and that title correctly, then they can accomplish so many things. So an aspirational goal of mine is to be elected into office. But my non-negotiable is to end poverty in District 30. I'm going to do that whether I'm elected or not, because I know the value of us uniting together. Together, we can make stability something nobody has to lose. Together, we can solve the problems that have caused confusion for so many others for so long. We can do that together. So join me in this series, this movement, and this mission to end poverty, because we can do it. This has been Apex Ascend. My name is Rodney LaBruce. And if you found this message meaningful at all, I'd like for you to share it. I'd love for you to subscribe to the Substack podcast. But stay tuned for the next episode where we're talking another aspect of understanding poverty. And then until next time, stay committed, stay strategic, and keep rising. I'll holler.